Hello, welcome to the interview here on France 24. Well, to her admirers, she's the heroic icon of Ukraine's 2004 Orange Revolution, a populist leader who fought back against a fraudulent presidential election and won. But today, Ukraine's former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko is serving a 7-year jail sentence in a remote prison camp 300 miles east of the capital, Kiev. Now, the government accuses her of abuse of office tied to a gas deal she signed with Russia while she was in office in 2009. But Yulia Tymoshenko says she's the victim of political score settling by the man she ousted back in 2004, Ukraine's current president, Viktor Yanukovych. Now, the U.S. and the European Union have so far agreed with Yulia Tymoshenko. And my guest today is also someone who obviously agrees with her because it's her daughter, Yevgenia Tymoshenko. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
You were here in France very briefly, but this is part of a broader European tour, to campaign for your mother's freedom, to rally the Europeans and get some support here in Europe. I want to start with your mother, though. She was transferred earlier this month to a new, more remote prison camp. Her health is said to be deteriorating. You yourself have said her life is at risk. When did you last see her? How is she doing?
I've seen her 10 days ago, and because I was her public defender during the court, and I was able to see her when she was in Kiev every day. Now authorities restricted the time I can see her to a few days a week, and even then the investigators can come in and have the priority over my meeting with her. I guess this is done also to constrain our communication with her, because now I'm the only member of the family who can go and defend her and talk about injustice that is happening.
Because now your father, he sought and was granted asylum in the Czech Republic earlier this month. So
That's right.
Besides you, there are no other immediate family members right now left in Ukraine with her?
No, and in fact, yesterday my grandfather, who was actually included somehow in the so-called criminal case against her, was also submitted to the criminal case and criminal investigation, whilst he is first-degree disabled at the moment, and the whole resurrection of some kind of criminal cases, 16-year-old, that's been closed by the Supreme Court of Ukraine, is another evidence of the politically motivated repressions against my mother.
So this is what you're saying. So in other words, you have a sense that they're not just going after your mother, they're looking for reasons to go after the rest of the family as well.
Well, they have already, and it's strange that after my father received a political asylum by Czech Republic authorities, he's been again convicted. The criminal case has been opened against him just 4 days after he received asylum. It looks like it's just constant revenge to pressure my mother into deciding to quit politics.
Well, I mean, this is interesting. You are here in Europe, and as I said in my opening, Europe so far agrees when your mother says this is political vendetta. This is politically motivated. European Union agrees. U.S. agrees. What have they been doing? Have you sensed that they've been supportive enough so far? How have they been helping you, your mother's case?
Of course, there's been unprecedented support. We didn't expect such support from European leaders or international organizations. I've just been to Strasbourg to speak in the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, and the monitoring report that came out as a really, unfortunately, bad resolution for Ukraine, which states that democratic institutions are falling down in Ukraine and are failing because of the Yanukovych's activity.
Did they mention, I'm sorry, did this report, this is a report from the European Council Monitoring Committee, did they mention specifically your mother's case?
Of course, it mentions my mother's case, but it mentions the case of Mr. Lutsenko and Mr. Ivashenko, who has been also imprisoned on the political charges. And it is an evidence now that Yanukovych's regime is trying to abuse the criminal code to distract his own opponents.
Lysenko was the former interior minister?
That's
Correct me if I'm
right.
wrong. And he was arrested one night when I think he was walking his dog.
That's right. And also it's example of a complete illegal and abuse of human rights and freedoms in Ukraine, and completely illegal practice. Even when I was present in the court, I could see that prosecution judges were working as one team, controlled by the presidential administration, and that's what actually Danish Helsinki report, commissioned by the EU, stated on several occasions, and so many European leaders also condemned the sentences and the political motivated trials.
Yevgenia, I need to ask you, though, about the actual charges, because for better or for worse, this is a trial and she has been accused with something. And that is notably, while she was prime minister in 2009, she signed a gas deal with Russia. The current government says she paid exorbitant prices and locked Ukraine into having to buy too much oil for too long. And as a result, Ukraine is in debt. The people are in debt. Mm-hmm. You say that's false and groundless.
Mm-hmm. Well, the gas case is based on complete absurd accusations. Why? First of all, cabinet and the prime minister is not liable to sign any agreements with anybody concerning the activity between two enterprises, which was Gazprom and Naftogaz,
which is the state gas company now.
State gas company now. My mother, what she did was prominent. She removed the corrupt structure Rosukrenergo from the gas trade in Russia, which de facto partners in which are now in government and are taking personal revenge at her, and that is the only thing that she is guilty of.
I mean, what seems interesting to an outsider, and I'm not a lawyer, and I admit that, is as prime minister, don't you legally have the authority to sign the deals you want, even if they're bad deals?
It's true that now a political decision by her has been criminalized so much that it's became scandalous. And of course, she was the one who solved European gas crisis then in 2009, and she did utmost her ability to help solution of this crisis. I mean, if you can see now, Ukrainian government with the Prime Minister Azarov cannot arrange the deal with Russia, and Russian gas now will cost us $200 higher than my mother's deal was 2 years ago.
So she got them a better deal than they would get today as a result right now. We have a strained European relationship with Ukraine right now. What do you say, and I'm not sure if you've spoken to Europeans like this, who say, political leaders, we really feel sympathy for your mother. Please understand, though, we also are very wary of jeopardizing our relationship with Ukraine. It's a giant country with a growing economy, or a once growing economy, and we have to play a balancing act.
Well, I think it's a myth that, by putting some sanctions or actions against the Ukrainian government and those who are repressing political opponents today, Europe can push away Ukraine. Ukraine is isolating itself. I mean, Yanukovych is isolating Ukraine from the world, and it's his actions that are pushing away Europe. And he was trying to, push himself into the arms of Russia, and Russia is also supporting its own interests.
But he's not. Yanukovych, despite the European pressure, despite them holding off so far in this trade and association agreement with Ukraine, he's not backing down. He's showing he's very proud about this.
I believe that Ukrainian people shouldn't suffer from his actions as a dictator at the moment. What we can do is our future, Ukrainian future, lies in Europe, and there's no other way. And I think that the agreement will be signed and will go on, but the only action now that could stop the dictatorship, the Ukraine falling into dictatorship, is to impose sanctions to the actual people who are abusing their power.
So you'd like European Union to impose sanctions on the current administration of Viktor Yanukovych?
I think that instead of Ukrainian people suffering from his actions, he himself and his circle of people who are repressing its own nation should suffer for it and take responsibility for it.
Yevgenia, in the little time we have left, you were telling me earlier, before we had this interview, that you last saw your mother a little over a week ago on January 16th. How was she then? What are you sort of telling her to give her hope and courage? We know she's a very energetic and courageous woman. What are you telling her when you see her?
Well, definitely I tell her that support in Europe and democratic world is continuing. Her supporters are there. They're not going to leave her until she is released. And they demand her immediate release with the a right to participate in the parliamentary elections this year, because these elections in Ukraine in autumn will not be fair.
October.
In October will not be fair unless two opposition leaders, her and Mr. Lutsenko, are the ones who participate in these elections.
So they're calling on all the opposition forces to sort of choose one candidate? Is that the idea?
So far, the opposition's been uniting, and it's been successful, and my mother called for it to be united. It's very important at the moment. But my mother's support is growing, and it's above Yanukovych's support, at least by 3% at the moment. So by autumn, we expect it to be much higher than Yanukovych's falling support.
Does she have any contact still today, political contact with Yushchenko, her former political partner in the Orange Revolution?
Well, unfortunately not. The evidence that Yushchenko gave against her in the court, which was completely false and betraying evidence, really pushed not only my mother and her team, but the whole Ukrainian nation against this person.
So for now, they're still on relatively bad terms. And finally, you've said in the past, maybe you've changed your mind, that you have no interest in becoming a politician yourself. You're not interested in politics. Is that a result of seeing your mother's experience, or it's just the way you are?
That's the way I am. I don't want to be a politician. I believe that my mother is the only one who can, I see as a political figure, and, it's very hard to be like her.
Yes. And maybe you look at her sometimes and you're saying, well, if that's politics,
then
maybe not.
I'm not part of it. I don't want to be part of it.
Yevgenia Tymoshenko, daughter of Yulia Tymoshenko, who I'll remind our viewers, the jailed former Ukrainian prime minister, says she is jailed on a political vendetta charges that are totally false. And Yevgenia, you're here in Europe basically campaigning to try to rally support, to try to bring some what you would say real justice for your mother. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And thanks to all of you for watching the interview here on France 24.